Hello everyone, today we will be discussing the Western and Eastern perspective, but now we will be focusing on Western perspective, which is more likely described with individual or interest as well as accumulation of knowledge, separate parts from the whole, master and control reality apart from and within. And of course, we have being independent, self-reliant, achievement-oriented, competitive, assertive, pleasure-seeking, self-assured, direct self-interest. That is in contrast with collectivist type of individuals such as the Eastern philosophers. All right. So Eastern philosophers are characterized with a socially interdependent. They are more connected, moderate, traditional, cooperative, obedient, self-sacrificing, sensitive, self-control, egalitarian, and more focusing on universal soul, intellect, and interrelatedness or oneness, and harmony and unified, and adapt to external change. All right. So that's the general difference between the Eastern and Western perspectives. All right. So there are individuals or group of individuals who are um, signified with this Western perspective or philosophy. All right. Let's start with the Stoics. So the Stoic started with founding father, the Zeno. So, okay, Zeno started this around 300 BCE because Zeno lectured at a place called Painted Porch. His followers were known as men of Porch. We also have okay, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Okay, so Seneca is a Roman statesman and tutor to the Emperor Nero, and Epictetus is a slave originally from Asia Minor whose Roman master freed him, and Marcus Aurelius is a Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD. All right. So let's discuss the four cardinal virtues of the Stoics. We have the prudence, justice, fortitude, moderation, or temperance. When we say prudence, it is the most important and most general of the Stoic virtues because it refers us here to the firmly grasped knowledge and of what is good and bad and indifferent in life. So in other words, understanding the most important things in life or grasping the value of things rationally. So it is opposite. Its opposite is what we call the vice of ignorance. We also have the justice. So the Stoics don't just mean what's just is the legal sense, but what would be moral in our dealings with others more generally. So for instance, they take into encompass a mother's attitude toward her children or our sense of piety toward the gods. So in the past, it was therefore translated more broadly as righteousness, or some modern authors simply refer to them as social virtue or morality. So its opposing bias occurs when we are unjust or do wrong by another person morally. So we also have fortitude. When we say fortitude, it literally means courage. So courage, although the Stoics also extend to it, include endurance of pain and discomfort more generally. So it's the opposite of the vice called the cowardice. All right. So it appears to form a pair with the virtue called moderation. So both refer the master of passions, the fortitude and moderation. All right. So moderation, this is also a slightly difficult term in some ways. It refers to the moderation or self-discipline or self-control, but also self-awareness or being self-possessed. We could even view it as closely related to what many people today mean as mindfulness. All right. So the Stoics also suggested the term eudaimonia or flourishing life. We also have the healthy and unhealthy, unhealthy passions and the healthy passions as well as the apatheia. Okay. So when we say eudaimonia or the flourishing of life, it may include the positive emotions, engagement of flow, meaning and purpose, positive relationships, high achievement, life satisfaction. So it is triangulated with these factors called the taking responsibility, or taking control of our own power, or take the rest as it happens to other things that we cannot control, and also expressing our highest version moment to moment. So that's how we achieve flourishing life. All right. So when we say unhealthy passions, or pathe, so it means pain or suffering. It means fear. It means craving and pleasure. All right. So when we say pain or suffering, it is failure to avoid something mistakenly judged and bad. All right. So when we say fear, it is irrational expectation of something bad or harmful. When we say lust or craving, it is irrational striving for something mistakenly judged as good, and pleasure, irrational elation over something that is actually not worth choosing. Okay, so when we say healthy passions, we have the caution or discretion with what we call the rational aversion of vice. And when we say wishing, it is a rational desire for virtue, and joy is the rational elation over virtue. Okay, so there are techniques on how to achieve the apatheia. So apatheia is equanimity and not indifference. So there are steps on how to achieve apatheia. So by steadying your nerves, or preparing yourself from realities of situation, we have controlling your emotions or recognizing your emotions. That's where your real strength lies, by appreciating really your own emotions. So not pretending that they don't really exist there, but really knowing that they exist. Okay, so we also have practicing objectivity. So practicing your objectivity means giving the information at the exact moment when it would be better to focus on what is immediately in front of us. So we must question our impulses, our perceptions of what is happening. Okay, but this takes strength as well, and practice. Okay, so we also have practice contemptuous expression. So when we say contemptuous expression, practicing it, so it suggests that we have to see things as they truly are, or actually are, not as we've made them in our mind. So for example, we have to appreciate our food as something like the dead meat. Okay, so these are how we can really appreciate them, by means of what they actually really are. Okay, and we also have the step number 5, the alter your perspective, or what we must do is limit and expand our perspective to whatever will keep us calm and most ready to task at hand. So think of the selective editing, for example, not to deceive others, but to properly orient ourselves, for instance. Okay, so we also have the next one, live in the present moment. When we say living in the present moment, what matters most is the here and the now. So we are pausing on the moment of what you can control right here and now. Okay, we also have looking for the opportunity. So there are some bad experiences that we might be experiencing. So there are also opportunities that lie during that kind of moment. Okay, so it is simply just looking for it. Okay, so let us discuss Arthur Schopenhauer. Okay, so Arthur Schopenhauer suggested that will, okay, is the driving impulse of all nature, and our essence is will. Will is the characterized by secret essence, eternal, unique purposelessness, and illogical. Okay, so similar with Freud's id. Okay, his concept is comparable with this Freud's id, or the will of Schopenhauer is comparable with Freud's. Okay, so Freud spoke about repression as well. All right. So while in this state, he came across the work that he argued that life was nothing more than a constant will to survive. So he is known for the term called the pessimism, if you are familiar with it. So pessimism is the belief that life is disappointing, and our way to cope with it is to detach or withdraw. So Schopenhauer suggested that it is most likely philosophical thought that enthusiastic audience like Nietzsche said that here I was a mirror in which the world life, my mind were reflected by fearful grandeur. So for example, we are having some difficulties with life. So our tendency is to really detach or withdraw from this suffering. So according to Arthur Schopenhauer, okay, the manifestation or objectivation of the will is occurring during the phenomenal world. Okay, so the will is the ultimate essence of everything. Okay, and reality itself. So it has different forms. As we have said, it has secret essence or sense, a force that pervade the whole reality. And we also have eternal or beyond the form of time. It has no end and no beginning. All right. So we also have the illogical and irrational or the blind dynamic force. We also have the unique. It exists outside space and time. We also have purposeless. It hasn't got an aim nor a target. It wants only itself. Okay. So these are the characteristics of the will of life. Okay. Now let's proceed with Friedrich Nietzsche. So Nietzsche, in summary, Nietzsche tasked us for to avoid the complacency or decide to simply live out our lives. So we also have to avoid frustration and resentment or self-hatred. And Nietzsche suggested us to develop ourselves into higher and unique person and accept everything about ourselves and our lives. But how can we both accept everything about ourselves and take up a project of self-development? So that's how we can reflect on what Nietzsche wants us to do. Okay, so philosophical view of Friedrich Nietzsche, with literally infinite views and experiences that we are having in every day of our lives. A person may accumulate the truths or that are subjected to our own biases and infinite interpretation of the experiences that we are having in this world. So for example, we are experiencing meeting some people around us or meeting those individuals who are just new in our lives or we're experiencing difficulties in our lives. So we can interpret them. We can interpret them based on our own biases and based on our own perceptions. That's how Nietzsche suggests us to understand the perspective of or the perspectivism. So there are infinite views on how we can interpret those experiences. Okay, so each perspective is impacted by spontaneous events, meaning that no two perspectives are alike. So for example, I have different perspective compared to my parents, compared to my friends, compared to my classmates, so on and so forth. So with this human fallacy in mind, there are no absolutes. Human truth becomes subjective and never objective. So it depends really on how we can interpret the realities that we are dealing with. So represented by the different appearances of an object based on the position of the observer. Okay? So the will to power. When we say will to power, it is the only law and the only morality. So it applies to all living things, and the pressure for survival or adaptation is less important than the desire to expand one's power. So living in itself appears to be a subsidiary aim, something necessary to promote one's power. Okay, so the notion of willpower is contrasted by Nietzsche with that of utilitarianism. So utilitarianism claims all people want fundamentally to be happy. Okay, so humans are divided into a natural aristocratic group and a naturally dependent and inferior one, which are always opposed. So exploitation is a natural consequence according to Friedrich Nietzsche, Nietzsche, of the will to power. Superior people express the will to power, taking advantage of their natural gifts and to achieve their full potential and dominance over others. So in contrast, we have the inferior individuals. So they have the different ideologies, or they have these slave moralities to try to deny the will to power. So they are expressing the will to power to truly living. So it can't be wrong according to Nietzsche. Okay, so how can we master morality according to Nietzsche? So master morality is the original system of morality. This is the morality of the superior people. So they are beyond good and evil. They believe that what is injurious to them is injurious in itself. So good is associated with wealth, is strength, health, okay, inspiring, fear, and power as well. So it means power enhancing, tending to full development of natural ability. So bad, according to Nietzsche, is related with a lack of power. So that means if you are lack of power, you are weak, you are poor, you are sick, you are pathetic. That is according to Nietzsche. So it means contemptible, power diminishing, and tending to be artificial, limitation of natural ability. So you're not fully utilizing your own ability to master this will to power, to fulfill full potential. So the noble soul lives according to the first law, that is the will to power. Okay. Now I think we have David Hume and Immanuel Kant. Okay. So David Hume suggested that there is no basis in experience for the idea of self or soul that persists through time and change. So our experience consists in particular perception or interpretation of our experiences. Okay, so when we enter into ourselves, we perceive particulars such as our feelings of heat or cold, hate or love, but we never experience self or soul. So the self is just a bundle of particular experiences without any consistency or identity through time. Alright? So the self is nothing but a bundle of impressions and ideas. And of course, when we say impression, it is basic objects of our experience or sensation, forms the core of our thoughts. When we say idea, it is the copy of impressions, not as real as impressions. Alright? So David Hume disagreed all the other aforementioned philosophers. So one can only know what comes from the senses and experiences. So he is an empiricist. So the self is not an entity beyond the physical body. So what you can hear, what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can see are based on the physical manifestation of our senses. Okay? So you know that other people are humans, not because you have seen their soul, but you heard them, you seen them, you perceive them by your senses. All right. And lastly, we have Immanuel Kant. So Immanuel Kant agrees with David Hume, so that everything starts with perception, sensation of impressions as well. So there is a mind that regulates these impressions. We are using our mind to synthesize what we have senses, okay, what we have sensed or what we have perceived. So that time, space, and the like are ideas that one cannot find in the world, so you cannot sense them, but it is built in our minds. That is our apparatus of the mind. So the self organizes different impressions that we are experiencing, that one gets into relation to his own existence. For example, there are experiences that you might interpret differently compared to your friends, compared to your family members, compared to your parents as well. So we need to include this what we call the active intelligence. When we say active intelligence, it is the synthesizing of all knowledge and experiences that we had. Okay, so the self is not only a personality but also the seat of knowledge. Okay, and the last one, we have the categorical law. Okay, categorical imperatives. When we say categorical imperatives, it may include the universal law, or treating humans as ends in themselves and act as if you live in a kingdom of ends. When we say universal law, all moral statements should be applied to everyone under all circumstances. So all moral statements should be general laws. So Kant uses these example of man who borrows money yet knows he cannot pay it back. So if everyone did so, no one would have any money. So that is a bad manifestation. Okay. So another one, we have that treating humans as ends in themselves. So don't exploit other people as you deny the person their right to be rational and independent judge of their own actions. All people should be treated equally according to Immanuel Kant, and people be treated equally as ends in themselves. And lastly, we have act as if you live in a kingdom of ends. So Kant assumed that all rational agents were able to deduce whether an argument was moral or not through reason alone. And so all rational humans should be able to conclude the same moral laws by appreciating them really. All right. So this concludes our discussion for this Western perspective. For the next lesson, we will be discussing the Eastern perspective. We will see you in the next video. Thank you so much.